we need other brains to help our brains operate as optimally as possible. If you're a person of faith, I'm a Christian. You know, it's not a surprise, and it's actually very significant, very meaningful that in that creation story, you know, God's saying, oh, and that's good, and that's good, and that's good. And then all of a sudden, he declares that something is not good. And what he says is not good is that this human being he's created is alone. It's not good that we're alone. And what we now know from developmental neuroscience is that as infants and children, our brains need brains that are more fully developed to help our brains develop. It's almost like these capacities that we need in our brains, they get downloaded from a brain that has that capacity into a brain that does not yet have that capacity. All right. And so we're created for the connection. We need it. Having connection allows us to flourish, which means that a loss of connection at minimum is a threat, and at worst is a trauma. In fact, we know from neuroscience that if I even perceive that a primary attachment relationship, that is a relationship that I really count on in my life, if I even perceive that it is under threat, then I am going to respond with what's a limbic dominant, cortex shutting down, head toward fight, flight, or freeze kind of response. It registers in my amygdala, which is the brain's fire alarm, as a threat. Okay, so that's the minimum. If I perceive a threat to an important connection, at minimum is that amygdala fires. At worst, if the threat is bad enough, if the experience is significant enough, is big enough on our brains, if it's way too much too fast or way too little for too long, that's big T trauma and little t trauma, then it affects our brains as trauma.